Welcome back. So yeah, this video is a recent reads. I think last year I pushed my recent reads to as close to the end of the year as I could so I could accurately say that it was all the books I've read that year. And then I guess the kind of overview and anticipated books were around the end of the year. And I didn't really want to do that. Again, I kind of wanted to get my best books video and my anticipated reads video for before the end of the year. And so yeah, so expect the best books video to be, I'm hoping to get it out sometime this week, and I think I'll save the anticipated reads video until after Christmas. So yeah, and so because I didn't have as much time to read much more books, I had to cut a few books from my TBR and push it to some unknown date. So unfortunately, I did not finish the True Colors series like I was hoping to have finished by this video, but I did get pretty far. So we're going to talk about mainly those books, but a few other books. So let's get into it. Alright, the first book I read was Wings Like a Dove by Christine Farenhorst. So yes, another one in this series. It's a biography of, I think the French pronunciation is Jeanne d'Albret. I think that's right. She's the princess and later queen of Navarre. I've never heard of this country. I don't even know if it still exists. So yeah, that is about her. And I think for ratings, I'm going to settle on a 2.5 stars. It's again, since it's a biography, it's probably as well done as it could have been, but I just did not enjoy this. So yeah, again, biography, so these things actually happened, but some things in this book had me did this actually happen? For one, we have in one of the first few chapters, our main girl is aware of her exact birthday, down to the year. And maybe this is just my ignorance, but I was kind of wondering, were people even aware of the year back then? And then another thing that had me what? And I'm more thinking maybe this is what happened. They were trying to get her married at 9 years old, and when I was first reading that, I was kind of okay, well, I know sometimes back then kids would get betrothed as kids, but then they wouldn't get married until they were older. So I thought, okay, maybe that's what it is. But they didn't say that. And then later on, they try to force her into a marriage when she's 11, and she ends up getting married when she's 12. So it's what is up with that? And then what was more disturbing about that is that after the wedding at 12, there's a scene where we think that the marriage is about to be consummated, but then the king comes in and he's never mind, that's not gonna happen, she's too young for that. And it's yeah, no, duh. So yeah, there's that. And also just the people in this book, most of them were not likable. The king and queen, don't really like them, for different reasons and at different times. And then her uncle, who's also a king, I think, don't like him. And then I think it was her like servant or babysitter essentially. I mean, I imagine she's probably just doing what she's told, but did not like her. And then even Jean, I mean, she gets better in the second half of the book when she's older, but in the first half, she's kind of a brat. My other issue is that this is supposed to be biographies of Christian women, but there wasn't enough faith, I guess. It talks about it talks about one of the main parts of this book is it talks about kind of the war between, I guess, the Protestants and the Catholics, though they don't actually use those words. They have different words for that. So that's kind of what's going on, but it's kind of just mentioned here and there and doesn't really come into play until the end of the book. So, and again, all what I just said is a biography, so it's not much you can do, but I just did not like this. So, Yeah. Alright, so for the next book, I was hoping to read another book before jumping back into the True Color series, but that book, I couldn't read it yet. You know how it can be with Libby Holt sometimes. So yeah, I went back to the True Color series for the big, sorry, I went back to the True Color series for a bit before I could read that book. So the first book that I read, that I actually also have a physical copy of, Burnt Orange Color Me Wasted by Melody Carlson. So yeah, this is so how I got this book. I wasn't planning on getting physical copies of any of these books, but I was at a charity book event and I saw this and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna read it anyway, so might as well get it. And it was only like $2. Such a steal. So, alright, so this book follows Amber. She is a pastor's kid. Everyone thinks that she's going to get the certain scholarship. She's generally upstanding, but she has a problem. She started with one party, and now she keeps hanging out with her friend, and they keep getting drunk, and she's shaping up to be an alcoholic at 18 years old. I think that's all that I can say. So, yeah, I ended up giving this 2 stars. And look, I know I've been kind of like judging like all the people I've seen on Goodreads give these books like 1 and 2 stars. I know I get frustrated with those people, but here's the thing: I don't expect Melody Carlson books to be good, but I expect them to be fun. This story was not fun, although I don't know if that applies here because there are some other books in this series that have also not been fun, but I still like them. I think one problem I had for me is that they're trying to like depict like an alcoholic, but I think the message of like why she's always drinking would have, I think it would have been more impactful if her friend was not pressuring her to drink all the time. But because they have her like pressuring to drink like every time they hang out, but then towards the end of the book, the story wants you to think that it's her choice to that she keeps drinking, which like, I mean, yes, technically it is her choice, but also I don't think she would, based on what I've got here, I don't think she would have drunk as much if her friend wasn't pressuring her all the time. I feel like if she wasn't pressuring her but she was still doing it, that might have been more that would have been better. And also, this is not, I guess more, this is I guess more of a side note, but like, it's interesting to me because Amber is 18, but I know that in the States where this takes place, the drinking age is 21, and I guess it also was that at the time this was written. But it's interesting for me because where I'm at, the drinking age is 18. So yeah, there's that. And then so after I ended up not liking this one, after I ended up not liking this one, I went to Goodreads to try to see, to read all the negative reviews to finally agree with something. But then the top reviews that kept coming up were people who liked this book. It was like, where were y'all when people were trashing the previous books? So, yeah, there's that. Like, seriously, I was contemplating giving this a 1 star at some points, but I was like, I can't think of any redeeming qualities. But now that I've thought of it, even though, yes, I don't like that her friend was like always pressuring her to drink, I do think that this book depicts the harsh realities of excessive drinking pretty well. And I think it could be good in encouraging teens not to do that. And I also appreciate the bookend where it kind of starts and ends with the same sentence. I remember I saw a review that said, although I wondered if this was going to be like Outsiders, which I haven't read The Outsiders, but I do plan to read that next year. So, yeah, I guess it's not all bad, but still didn't like this. And I forgot to add in my notes the content concerns. I think this one's, I mean, obviously there's drinking and there's, I think maybe some kisses, but I don't think there's that much of a concern. So, yeah. The next book in this series that I read is Fool's Gold Color Me Consumed. So this book is about Hannah. She is a missionary kid who grew up in Papua New Guinea, and for the summer she's staying with her rich relatives in California. And her aunt and her cousin are all about the expensive clothes, and Hannah kind of gets pulled into that world. So, this one was certainly better than the previous book. So, yeah, don't have much else to say on that. And I will say, so, as it says, Hannah grew up in Papua New Guinea, and so a lot of her peers are Australian, and so after hanging around with them, she has kind of adopted an Australian accent, although I don't think it ever says what her real nationality is. So yeah, and it's not even just like you're supposed to imagine that accent, but also sometimes the words that she uses are kind of more to that. Although when I first read those words, I was like, wait, is she British? So yeah, so I thought that's all that to say. I thought that was an okay attempt on Melody's part at different character voice. Although an Australian accent is like kind of hard for me to imagine. Like, like British accent, I can imagine fine. Southern accent, probably fine. But Australian, I don't really know. I mean, listening to Robert Irwin speak on Dancing with the Stars every week did help a little bit. But then when I try to use that for help, I just imagine man voice, and then I'm like, no, this is a girl. So yeah, this book reminded me of the Christy Miller series, particularly the first book with the California setting and the surfing. So yeah, appreciate that. For content, I think there's like just kisses and underage drinking. So yeah. The next book I read in the series is Blade Silver Color Me Scarred. So this book follows Ruth. Her home life is not that great. Her dad is very verbally abusive, even physically abusive in one instance, and her mom is kind of a ghost of a person, so life is not great for her, and she copes with the pain by cutting herself. And I don't really know where to go in the steps. The official synopsis doesn't say much more than that. So, before like reading the series and kind of like looking up, kind of skimming past all the Goodreads, it seemed like this one would be considered the best one because it has the highest average rating. And while I don't know if like, it's certainly not my favorite of the series, and I don't know if I'd say it's the best one, but it's still one of the better ones of the series. I think it does a good job at like putting you in Ruth's shoes. Like, I was someone who I'd say like never really understood cutting. I mean, not like I thought about it that much, but when I would hear about it, I was like, yeah, I don't understand why someone would do that. And this book, well, I still don't fully understand it, but I'm getting there. So yeah, all that was good, but there are some problems with this one. For one, the faith content. So it isn't until like towards the end of the book that we get any faith content, and what we do get, not great. For one, there's yoga, and it's not seen as a bad thing, which I don't know that much about yoga, but from what I understand, it's a spiritual practice and not a Christian one. So, yeah, there's that. And then there are also just some other things said that made me kind of go, yeah. And then I guess the last thing I kind of say is that the ending, there was still quite a few things unresolved. Like, I get we're probably not going to have any resolve with her dad, but like, and actually, one thing that I would have liked to see this book is Ruth make things right with Alexi. I feel like that would have, I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I guess there's not really much content concerns, but I guess like triggers. So, for like cutting, obviously, and then also verbal abuse. So, yeah. Then I finally got to read the book that I intended to read earlier, which is True to You by Becky Wade. So yeah, Becky Wade is kind of one of the more popular Christian authors. I think her most popular book is My Stubborn Heart, which I know is a lot of people read it and it recently got an updated cover. So yeah, I think this is the first I've read of her books, and I wanted to read this one because I remember it was in my school library, and I wanted to do this thing of like reading books that were in the school library but I didn't get to. So yeah, I wanted to start with this one. So this book follows Nora. She's a genealogist. Is that how you say it? But it's basically like genealogies. She's knowledgeable in that area. So, and she meets the ex-Navy SEAL John Lawson, and then he eventually comes to her because he comes to her to try to get help in finding his birth mother after he got a diagnosis. So she helps him with that, and of course they kind of bond through that. So when I got to start reading this book again, like I said, it was on Libby, and I looked and I was like, why is this nearly 600 pages? Now, the actual, like, story part on Libby is only, like, 530 pages, but that's still a lot. And according to Goodreads, the actual book is, like, only 370 pages, so I don't know why there's that big a disparity. So, yeah. And I was also, because it was long, I was worried I was kind of falling back in needing to be drawn in to really like something. And I was like, no, I can't go back there. But thankfully, I still appreciated some aspects. Some of the aspects being her sisters. I think I will read the rest of the series just to read their stories. Although I'm not sure which one I'm more looking forward to. Like, I think as a character, I liked Britt more than Willow, but I am more curious about Willow's story because it seems from this book that they're gonna go second chance romance with her, which I don't think I've read much of that before, so that should be interesting. And also, this is fitting after just complaining about Blade Silver. The faith content in this really impressed me. Like, so there's not throughout most of the book, there's not much. Like, there's kind of just casual mentions of church, and I don't even know if there's even a mention of God. So there's kind of just that, and I was like, okay, is this even a Christian book? But then at the end, we get good faith content, and it's solid, and nothing made me theologically cringe. So yeah, there's that. But now let's get to some of the negatives of this book. So before reading this book, I'd heard from a review that there would be a cheating element. And I started the book, and of course, for at least like 12 chapters of this book, John has a girlfriend, and it ain't Nora. So, yeah, there's that. I mean, I don't know if I'd outright say it's cheating because, like, he did break up with his girlfriend before dating Nora, and they didn't really. I mean, I guess they could have not gone on that trip together, but like, so maybe he could have done some things better. But all in all, I think it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Although I think the problem that I have with it is that we also find out in this book that Nora's ex also left her for another girl. So what I don't really understand is how come we're supposed to not like what happened to Nora, but how is what she's doing now any different? That's the only thing I have with it. But then also another part of this book, the content. So there's like I think maybe one or two innuendos, and then one just straight up sexual reference. Oh, okay, maybe not sexual reference. I think maybe it's referring to arousal, but still, and like maybe it's realistic, but it just took me by surprise that that kind of stuff would be in a Christian book. I mean, and other than that, there's not really any content concerns. I guess there's like again the romance is like just kissing, and then I guess another thing to keep in mind there is kind of brief talk of RAPE. So yeah, there's that. But despite all of my problems, so I end up giving this 3.5 stars, and I will say like this is probably like I think while not too long ago I made that Christian book Christian fiction books that are actually good, and I only had 4 books at the time, and that included Where the Blue Sky Begins, which I had recently read. And I'll say, this is the first Christian book that could fall under actually good Christian fiction book that I've read since Where the Blue Sky Begins. So that in and of itself is something. Just be aware of my concerns. So I'm surprised how fast I am in talking about these kinds of books. Alright, so back to the True Color series. Back to the True Color series. So the next book I read was Bitter Rose, Color Me Crushed. So this book follows Magdala, aka Maggie, and she finds out that her parents might be separating. Her dad just left, and at first she wants to blame her mom because her mom has been a little snippy lately, but then she finds out that things are not as they seem, or what she thinks things are. So now she has to figure out being angry at her parents at different times and trying to forgive. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, the notes I've made are mainly things for like problems I had, but I did still like give this 3 stars. So the first problem that I had, so Maggie's family is described as being Reformed Catholic, and her extended family is traditionally Catholic. But despite all that, we don't really find out what Reformed Catholic means, or really any, or hardly any Catholic faith elements. Now, I'm not Catholic, so this isn't coming from like, I'm offended you didn't portray my religion right, but it's more like kind of, it just felt like she wasn't trying that hard to separate it from their other faith. Like, all we get in terms of Catholic faith elements are like the preacher being called a father, one mention of the rosary, and a crucifix. That's all we get. Or at least tell us what Reformed Catholic means. Like, at this point, I'm starting to think Reformed Catholic is something Melody Carlson made up so she didn't have to put in that many Catholic faith elements. Like, I don't know. I don't know what else to make of this at this point. And then, another thing to be aware of is there is a sort of relationship that Maggie has with a 20-year-old when she's 17. So yeah, I wasn't really sure what to think of that when it first came up. Like, this is. But it's not like this relationship is portrayed as a good thing, so there's that. So I don't think it's that. So I wouldn't like caution you against this book because of that, but just be aware of it. And then the whole message of forgiveness. So yeah, she's kind of that's kind of one of the main themes of this book, and like I don't have that much of a problem with, but I heard these ideas recently, and I kind of wanted to put them out there, although they're already out there, but it seems like still not many Christians are aware of it. And that is the idea. Like, I think we've kind of misunderstood forgiveness. Biblical forgiveness is supposed to be about reconciliation. Now, sounds good so far. So where do a lot of Christians get it wrong? Where they get it wrong is that if that's what biblical forgiveness is, then you can't exactly forgive someone who hasn't repented of what they've done to you. So, yeah, again, I'm not saying I agree with it, I'm just saying, putting it out there, just something to think about. So, yeah, and then for content, hold on, I might have to pull up my Goodreads review to kind of remember. I remember some of the content, but alright, found my content notes. So there's mention that her mom sometimes swears in Spanish, but we don't know what those words are, and one use of freaking as a substitute for you know what, and then just kind of talks of sex, but not in an explicit way. So yeah, overall not bad. Maybe one of the lower tiered books of the series, but still it was okay. So last book I read in this series, and this is the 9th book, but it's not as far as I've gotten in this series, because I have read the 10th book before, but yeah. So the ninth book, Faded Denim, Color Me Trapped. So this book follows Emily. She is overweight and she has this fashion obsessed friend, and she hatches this project to try to work on Emily, clean up, um how do I say this? Kind of make her more beautiful / help her lose weight. So she goes on this journey to lose weight, but Emily doesn't go about losing weight in the best way. So yeah. So I kind of figured either this book or Color Me Crushed, Bitter Rose, I guess, would either one of those books would be about EDs. And it seems like this one is about EDs. So, but I do have a bit of problems with this book. So, I'm going on a little spiel about this whole weight loss idea. So, this book was released in the 2000s, 2006, I think. So, and while I was born in the 2000s, I wasn't really aware of all the cultural stuff going on at the time. But I know from what I've heard now that the 2000s was a bit of a strange time with weight and thinness, especially for women. Like, women were called fat if they were a few pounds above an anorexic weight. I mean, we all know what they did to women like Britney Spears and Jessica Simpson. So yeah, I just want to start my point by acknowledging like that was the culture back then. And so Emily is described early on in the book as being a size 17. So, and I had to look up what size 17 means, and at least nowadays, I'm not exactly sure what it would have meant in the 2000s, but nowadays, a size 17 is like a 1X. So, like, overweight is what I'm trying to say. So, my point in saying that is that, like, it was not, I don't think it was wrong for Emily to want to lose weight. The problem is that she was trying to lose weight through the Biggest Loser method of like eating very little and like exercising a lot, and that eventually makes her anorexic. So yeah, but my problem with this book is that there was kind of a back and forth where sometimes the books make it clear, oh, it was just the way she was trying to lose weight that was bad. But then sometimes they say things that kind of allude to, well, it was bad for her to want to lose weight at all. And it was like, is this the whiplash people talk about? Like, and also a minor thing, there was one line toward the end that seemed to imply that water isn't nourishing enough. I don't know who needs to hear this, but you don't have to drink your calories. I mean, it's fine if you do sometimes, but water is good. Like, yeah. So yeah, there's that. But and then one thing that I found interesting about this book was the camp setting for parts of this book. I mean, sometimes it feels like I've read more camp setting books in recent years, but I can only think of three. That's a Bat and Bunk 5, or there's a Bat and Bunk 5, the Christy Miller book. Wait, which one? 17 Wishes. I wasn't sure if that was. It's in this one. Yeah, and then Summer According to Humphrey. Those are so only three, but it's still. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, I don't think there's any content concerns. There's not even really a romance in this one. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of alludes that there could be one, but there's nothing that doesn't really get anywhere in this book. And I guess obviously trigger warning for EDs. So yeah. So that's it for this video. Hopefully it's not, I mean, I think that this ended up being shorter than I feared it was going to be. So yeah, that is all. Goodbye.